Welcome to Penn State Dickinson Law's Profiles in Leadership series. My name is Daryl Lim. I serve as the H. Leddy Montague Jr. Chair and Associate Dean for Research and Innovation at the Law School. I'm your host, and today we are featuring a leader whose work sits at the intersection of law, advocacy, and women's empowerment. Our guest is Gabrielle Buckley, Director of the Gannon Center for Women and Leadership at Loyola University Chicago. A proud graduate of Mundelein College and DePaul University College of Law, she brings a rare combination of legal acumen, civic engagement, and institutional leadership to her role. Before leading the Gannon Center, she practiced immigration and international law for over 2 decades, most recently as a shareholder at Vedder Price. Her influence extended to the boardroom and beyond. She served on the boards of Refugee One, World Chicago, and the United Nations Association Chicago, and has been deeply engaged in advancing women's leadership through the American Bar Association and Direct Women. Under her leadership, the Gannon Center has deepened its mission of fostering ethical, engaged leaders while honoring the legacy of Sister Anne Ida Gannon. She is also a nationally recognized advocate for justice, consistently ranked among Illinois super lawyers and honored as Corporate Woman of the Year by the National Association of Women Business Owners. In this episode, we'll talk about the paths that brought her here, what leadership means in moments of change, and how she's shaping the next generation of women leaders. Let's begin. Welcome.
Thank you, Daryl. It's lovely to be here.
Let's start with where you were born. Tell us a little bit about your family and your upbringing.
Well, I was born in actually Oak Park, Illinois, but grew up in Arlington Heights, Illinois, a suburb to the northwest of the city of Chicago. I'm the eldest of 5 children, which of course assists in my becoming and being a leader, whether my siblings preferred that or not. I had very actively involved parents, civically um, and professionally, which really set a wonderful example for me. I have It's me and 3 brothers and a sister, so I grew up in the rough and tumble of a close family. I My father was a judge, and he was on the bench for approximately 44 years in the Illinois state courts. My mother was a teacher and a homemaker, and they were both very involved in all types of community activities. My father was a founding member of the board of a Center for Disabled Children. We were Democrats in a vastly Republican region, and so my mother served as our precinct captain and election judge and strong campaigner uh, in our neighborhood, and also when my father had to run for election. As you know, in Illinois, unfortunately or fortunately, our judges are elected. And so my father had to run for office a number of times, and we all pitched in. In fact, my first year of college, I received class credit for working on his campaign, which was actually pretty all-consuming, of course. But he did win. Um, but we were very involved in community and in politics from an early age.
So, how did you decide which college to go to?
Well, I was it was sort of interesting because I part of it was financial. As the eldest of 5 children and the daughter of an honest judge, we were we did not have a lot of money to pay for a private school, and I received a full scholarship to Mundelein College, which was, I will tell you too, I had attended, this is a very important part, I think, of my development as a person. I attended a Catholic all-girls high school, which was run by nuns, women religious, who were very committed to social justice and leadership. And so when I was looking at colleges, I really very carefully considered attending women's college because I knew the benefits of single-sex education for women, at least at that time. So my mother had attended Mundelein College, as had her 2 sisters. So we had a family legacy there. I was very familiar with the school. The downside, of course, was that it was only an hour from my home, but my scholarship allowed me to live at school, so I was not commuting away from 3 brothers and a sister every morning to get to class. But I think that was a big part of it. It was financially, but also I was very committed to single sex education. I thought it was really important. It allows especially women in a single-sex education, to focus on academics and not be distracted by some of the other things that occur in an educational system that is really focused a lot of times on men. In a single-sex college or high school, women are always expected to be leaders, have the opportunities to be leaders. We're leaders in all areas of a school, sports teams, uh, um, student government, and just academically. So I think it was a very important part of who I am really was having education with religious women. It made a big difference in my life.
Do you think we are doing enough to give parents today viable options for single-sex education?
No, I think that there are very few, even high schools that are single-sex high schools. In the Chicago area, there's really only one left for girls. And I think that the college, unfortunately, in the world we have now, historically, women have not been in C-suites. They have not been the ones who've made a lot of money after graduation from college. So the endowments for women's colleges have not at all kept up with the endowment for men's colleges, universities, or colleges and universities overall. So in the 90s, when my college, Mundelein College, decided it needed to close for financial reasons, it looked for a partner with which it could affiliate. Fortunately, Loyola University was 3 feet away, and we were able to affiliate with Loyola University. But many women's colleges at that time had to affiliate or merge with other universities to enable to survive. But so I don't think there are a lot of options. Now, there's been, a lot of discussion, obviously, about gender and education. My brothers all attended single-sex high school, St. Viator High School in Arlington Heights. And I think that oftentimes men's or boys' single-sex schools could have benefited from having women in the classroom. But I think for women, especially then, we're still catching up in so many areas, and having that focus on pure academics, pure support in leadership and development of opportunities, I think is really an advantage for women to have.
So what do you think we need to do differently or more of so that we can reverse that trend?
Well, that's really what I do for a living, which is, of course, to promote women in leadership. And it's interesting the way we now phrase our values and mission statements is not creating women leaders, it's really to support women in leadership. And that's what we do. And the interesting thing about the Gannon Center at Loyola is that we support women to be leaders in all aspects of their lives, not necessarily in a boardroom or a C-suite, but in their lives. So they're leaders in their communities, in their homes, wherever they find themselves, to develop their leadership skills to be able to apply them in all aspects of their lives. So I think what we need to do is what many schools are doing or have been doing until very recently, which is promoting diversity, including gender diversity, in our colleges and universities. And I think it's something we need to continue to do because we are, like in many parts of our society, we're playing makeup, having had a very strong patriarchal white leadership model in this country, and we do need to just try to move on from that and able to encompass the diversity of all genders and all views in our leadership, in our educational system, and in all aspects of our lives.
And part of your education also took you overseas. So you were at Konan University in Kobe. How did that come about, and what were some of the
Well,
takeaways you had from that type, part of your life?
well, that's it's an absolutely critical part of my life, and I think that most students who studied abroad will say the same thing. But I grew up in a family that was very focused on knowledge of the world and appreciation of other cultures. And I'd studied German in grade school, even in high school, but I'd also started studying Japanese, thinking that Asia was something that I needed to know more about. So I'd started studying Japanese with the children's group at the Midwest Buddhist Temple and adult education at night in high school and early in my college career. And my father had actually gone to the University of Illinois, Champaign, or Chicago, to pick up some materials on a University of Illinois program in Germany or in Austria to work on my German skills. Well, lo and behold, the University of Illinois just was opening a program in Kobe, Japan at Konan University. And so he picked up those materials and I was off and spent a year living with the Japanese family, studying there. I lived with a wonderful family, especially my Japanese mother was a wonderful teacher. And it really helped me gain an appreciation of another culture uh, and living with another culture. Not just, I think these days, many students study abroad, but they live in a dormitory with other American students and, venture out maybe to, uh, in many ways to the community. But I think living with a family really does enable you to learn so much more about the culture.
Are
But
you
that, my
are
study
you
of
still in touch
Japanese,
with the
oh,
family?
go ahead.
Are you still in touch with that family?
Pardon me? Oh, yes, I'm still in touch with family. In fact, I'm going to be in Japan in October, and I'll see my Japanese brothers when I'm there in October. But no, I've stayed in touch with them all along, and for many years, I my my practice of law was involved almost solely with Japanese clients. So I was there 4 times a year probably, and got to see them quite frequently.
Sorry to interrupt you. So please
So,
go ahead and finish your thought.
oh, no, I was simply going to say that because of my language skills, it really changed my career trajectory or focused my career trajectory because of my language skills and my skills and understanding of the Japanese culture.
So, what drew you to a career in international? I imagine that your time in Japan might have something to do with it, but I don't want to frame it for you. Tell us about that journey from your time in college to practice and a little bit about how the international law aspect became part of your practice.
Well, I was always, what drove me always was international. That was, if I have to look at a keyword for my life, it would be international. So I'd always wanted to do something that involved the rest of the world. And in fact, my initial plan was to join the Foreign Service and be a diplomat. That was my plan. And I, when I was finishing law school, I realized that my Japanese skills were in great demand because of the times. Japan was making huge investments into the United States, and there were very few Americans, especially American lawyers, who had any idea of how to really cope with a culture so foreign from their own. And I had those skills. So what was very interesting is when I came out of law school, there were a lot of accounting firms that were interested in me, and they would say, "Well, how many classes do you need to be able to sit for the CPA exam?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I mean, how many would I need to take in order, in order to do that?" So that was not where I was headed. But I did join a firm that was actually it was a Baker McKenzie spinoff. When I was interviewing for my job, it was with Baker McKenzie. But my third year of law school, the Japan practice broke away with the fellow who had started the practice, and he started his own firm. So my job sort of moved over there with him. So I joined a small firm that had our clients were, Mitsubishi Bank, Japan Airlines, major Japanese companies, Mitsubishi Electric. So that was right out of the gate. I was completely surrounded by Japanese culture and Japanese business requirements, and in foreign direct investment issues. So it really launched me in my career for the next several decades, or at least a couple of decades, when I did primarily Japan related work. So, but I went back, it's interesting because my plan was always to join the Foreign Service. And about 7 years out of law school, I realized that, oops, I forgot to do that. And, it's kind of hard to get back. But at one point, I did sit for the Foreign Service exam, and I did pass the exam. And I did not I did not pick the right cone. I'd taken the exam, there's litigation. I found out years later that I had in fact passed. They invited me back in. I did all the interviews and the whole 1 day long process of further interviews. And the process had changed where you have to select a cone and all these other things that I had not really paid attention to. But I was put on the list immediately to be picked up. Um, I could have moved up higher in the list if I had worked on my Japanese skills to be able to pass the Foreign Service exam, which is pretty demanding for Japanese, especially reading and writing. And I had a child. I was a partner in a big law firm, and it was like, that's just probably not going to catch up. So I was not picked up off the list, but I did pursue it. But then I really discovered that what I was doing was I was working as a diplomat this entire time, working with people from other cultures, moving things forward, enabling things to happen, and improving communication between peoples of all different countries. So I was a civilian member of the U.S. Foreign Service. That's how I kind of view myself.
That's a good way to put it. So I imagine not too many people have taken a foreign service exam. What goes into the exam?
Well, I say if you read the New York Times cover to cover for a year before you take the exam, you'll be just fine. But it was interesting because the exam was pretty predictable, especially in terms of, current government policies around the world, that type of thing that you can learn. But the more interesting part of it, I think, was the full day of in-person uh, interviewing, which really was very interesting because we had to do things that, as a lawyer, I did every day. So I kind of felt sorry for the people who were just out of college because we had to draft what was really a white paper arguing a point. We had to negotiate uh, an aspect of foreign policy with someone, and if you had engaged in negotiations for years as a lawyer, it gave you these strengths. So that was a very interesting part of it, and that was just like a day at the office for me. So that was, and that really comes from experience, and I think it's probably harder these days well, until January of 2025, harder to become a member of the Foreign Service because it requires so many life skills that in the old days, I think you took an exam and boom, you were in. And now there's so much more priority placed on the, the interview day when you're engaged in what you'd be engaged in an ordinary day as a diplomat. But
So,
I strongly encourage anyone to sit for the exam and and aim for that as a career because I think it's a absolutely wonderful career and I think it's really critical to the world.
and I hope our viewers out there got that plug. So, trace your career journey from that point then. How did you navigate your path to becoming a partner at Vedder Price?
Well, it was a bit of a circuitous route because I seemed to be on a three-year track, and I spent 3 years with the Seki Jarvis and Lynch, which was the firm that represented Japanese companies. I then actually went in-house to Borg Warner Corporation because I had so much experience in antitrust law and international trade law. So I moved to in-house to Borg Warner, which was a large company primarily known as an automotive company. I worked primarily for the automotive subsidiary, but I worked as an antitrust counsel for all the different parts of the corporation, uh, chemicals, security, electronics. So I was a young lawyer sitting in meetings with much older white males, uh, trying to ride herd on them in meetings to keep them from setting prices and engaging in other activities that were in violation of the law. So that was a very important part of my life. I actually moved to Detroit to be part of Borg Warner Automotive, and I spent a number of years there doing not only antitrust work, but also a lot of M&A and general corporate work. I then, at some point, I was in Detroit, Michigan, and decided that that was probably not where I would be spending the rest of my life. So I moved back to Chicago and I joined a firm. I joined Cat Mushin and Zavis at the time in the Chicago office, and I was brought in to help develop their Japan practice. They'd begun it a couple of years earlier, and I had the connections, but more importantly, I had the language and cultural skills to be able to work with those types of clients. So I worked with them for a number of years, and then I moved to New York when I was getting married, and ended up working with Kelly Dry and Warren again in their Japan practice. And so I developed very strong relationships with Kelly Dry and Warren clients, Japanese clients, but also with their German clients. And I was doing a lot of work with their German clients. And I transferred back to Chicago with Kelly Dry and Warren and had a very nice book of business, something, of course, young lawyers, law students, lawyers of any age realize gives them a lot of freedom in their career is to have a book of business. And I had probably about $1 million worth of business, which was unusual for a woman my age. And I was looking, Kelly Dry was not as supportive of my practice and my business development. And so I had an offer from Better Price to come and help them with develop their international practices and their Japan practice. So I moved to Better Price over, let's see, oh my gosh, 24 years ago. I can't believe it, as a partner, and spent 17 years there. So there was a common thread through all of it, which was really being an internationalista and Japan practice, which really led me through all different all different companies. Especially, I did a lot of work in the automotive industry, not with, and a lot of it actually with German companies. Mitsubishi, sorry, rather not Mitsubishi. Mitsubishi Bank was always a big client, but Mercedes-Benz became a very large client of mine, and so I worked with them, not only with automotive but also different trucks, different parts of Mercedes-Benz, and went through the Daimler Chrysler merger and disengagement while I was at Vetter. So it was a very rewarding career, very rewarding career.
So, on behalf of those lawyers out there trying to figure out how to transmit at a different frequency when dealing with German clients and Japanese clients, what would you say to them?
I would say that, first of all, it's important to study the culture and gain an understanding of the culture overall. And this can be done in so many ways, especially in larger cities. Join your Council on Global Affairs. Uh, Take a class in a language, even if it's a basic class in adult education, to just gain some knowledge of how language is even structured. But I think the biggest thing is to have an open mind, listen, and really and observe how they behave in a meeting. Different cultures behave so differently. I mean, sadly, very often, people in other cultures can pick an American out of a meeting from first glance. And I say this having gone to meetings in other countries with American attorneys who really did not have a good grasp um, of other cultures at all. And I've seen, I don't want to be sound like a white male basher, but sitting relaxed in a chair with their legs apart, wearing an open collar to a meeting with European lawyers. Um, it's just there are different cultures, cultural norms, and you really need to understand those, I think, to be accepted and to be successful in working with these people in these other cultures.
Thanks. So, you have held leadership roles in the ABA and Direct Women. What impact do you think those experiences had on your approach to leadership?
I think absolutely critical. The American Bar Association offers so many opportunities to become a leader and provides so many mentors to learn from, that I think that was absolutely critical in my development. And I have to say, my experience, extensive experience with the American Bar Association, was the best experience I brought with me to Loyola, working in a large university. And Daryl, I'm sure you can identify with this, because the ABA is an umbrella organization with different sections and standing commissions and committees, and they're all competing for the same resources, and there are different leadership styles throughout, and you really need to politically be able to navigate, even though the university or the ABA all has, similar goals, they're reaching them differently with very different priorities. And that was really that was the best experience I've ever had in terms uh, of leadership. I think also I had the opportunity to chair the international section of the ABA, which at the time had 24,000 members in 100 countries. I was able to lead task force and commissions, and I was able to, most importantly, observe others in how they led. And that was really important, because I am not a screamer. It's not in my nature. I don't believe that is all productive. And I was able to see had the same values and communication styles as I did. And you see the full range of how people lead in an organization like that. It also gave me so many other opportunities. I sat on the 12-member commission on women in the profession, which allowed me to work with outstanding women leaders. But really, there are women leaders throughout, but I've just had the opportunity to be exposed to many, many mentors and some female, many men in developing my own values, mission, and skills. So I think ABA has been absolutely critical to my life. And I do encourage all, especially law students and young lawyers, to make sure that they're active in the ABA and to seek out what they're interested in. And the interesting thing, I'll give a little plug for the international section of the ABA or the ABA overall, is you don't need to practice in an area in order to join a section. It's something you have an interest in, join. And you can gain leadership opportunities and meet people that can allow you to practice in that area, even if you don't now. But it also gives you many leadership opportunities and publishing opportunities, speaking opportunities. I think it's really critical to growing your career and growing your personal skills.
So then you decide that you want to transition. You transition from law and now you're leading the Gannon Center. So first of all, tell us about that process of transition and tell
Well,
us a
I
little
think
bit
I'd have to say
about
that
the Gannon Center.
you
Yeah.
know, oh, I'm sorry, I'm having a little delay in our talk. I might even turn my face off if you don't mind,
No,
if
we'll
we'll
keep the
edit out.
video on. Yeah.
No? Okay. All right. Okay. Um, but I think I'd always been very active in nonprofit and NGOs. And it was, I grew up with the mantra of to whom much is given, um, much is required. And in a culture of giving back. And so my leadership style reflects that. My life reflects that. So I've always been very active in nonprofit work and primarily with something related to international. It could be international business, human rights, uh, refugees. But as you mentioned, I was president of the local chapter of the United Nations Association and chaired a number of boards, mostly related to international issues. And so I'd had this leadership experience, and it was just a personal, well, two things. One, it was 2016 when I started to look at this option because practicing in the international field was becoming a little bit more difficult at the time. We were going from being a very global country to becoming a more protectionist country. And it was not a direction I really appreciated or thought we should be in. And I think it would be better maybe if I looked at saving the world full time instead of in my spare time. And it was just, personally at a time, my son had just graduated from college. I'd sold the big house. I owned my car. And financially, frankly, I was able to make that decision to move to a nonprofit. And my landing at the Gannon Center for Women in Leadership at Loyola was completely serendipitous, or there are other ways to some people. I work at a Catholic institution, and um, some people say that coincidence is the long way to spell God. But I was looking at, I thought, well, my background, people probably don't realize that I have the skills to lead a nonprofit, and so if you looked at dumped out my resume and turned it sideways, I did. But I thought maybe I should obtain some sort of a certificate in nonprofit management or something. And I was on the Notre Dame website looking at its certificate program, and a job popped up on my side of my screen, director of the Gannon Center for Women in Leadership at Loyola. And of course, I was very involved with the Gannon Center because it was created to continue the legacy of my alma mater, Mundelein College. So I called the director and I said, Janet, what's happening? She said, oh, I'm retiring. And I said, well, who's replacing you? And she said, we just started the search. And I said, well, don't think I'm crazy, but I'm throwing my hat in the ring. And she said, oh, no, really? That was perfect time, perfect job. And I came over, and I'd always done a lot of work in promoting women's leadership. Excuse me a second. Take a sip. Um,
Me too.
okay, talking. So it was a really natural move for me. And I'd always worked with women in leadership at the ABA, obviously in the commission on women in the profession, but I was appointed to that commission because of my experience in mentoring women at the law firms I'd been with, at the nonprofits I'd been involved with, communities, local communities. So it was really a very natural move for me. And in a way, it was sort of eerie because I was right back where I started. I was in Piper Hall, which is a beautiful building on Loyola's campus, and it was the Mundelein College library early in the college's history. And in fact, my Aunt Florence worked as a librarian in the very building I office in now. So it was really right back to where I started, but with a whole huge lifetime of experience in between. So I interviewed with them, and as you know, in typical university fashion, 6 months later, they selected me for the position, and uh, I haven't really looked back. I still practice law on a pro bono basis. I don't have any paying clients, so I keep my I keep my finger on the pulse, and but I really miss my clients most of all, and I do stay in touch, as you know, with a number of them, and they're very rewarding relationships to me. But that was the thing I missed most was regular contact with my clients. But the skills as a lawyer translate to doing anything, which is really why I went to law school instead of going right into the foreign service after college. It made more sense to have legal skills and have the analytical skills that you develop in law school. So
So,
there I
no,
was. Here I am.
and there you are. So, talk about your approach towards mentoring young women. The Gannon program is quite unique in that it's focused on, as you say, supporting women into positions of leadership. How do you prepare young women across different sectors?
Well, first of all, the program has been historically an undergraduate program, but it now, as you know, includes graduate students as well. And our approach is really to help, first of all, to model leadership, the model my kind of leadership, and also then to help these students identify their values, because that's the most important part of leadership is knowing what your values are, evaluating them, identifying, developing your skills, your leadership skills, and learning how to strategize um, and utilize these skills in moving forward with leadership and leading others. And the way we do this is, many ways, obviously through modeling, through bringing in guest speakers, but also providing leadership opportunities for our Gannon scholars. We have our Gannon scholars, undergraduate scholars meet weekly for all 4 years of college, unless they're studying abroad. And much of the programming is led by students. They select topics they think are of interest to other students. They prepare the presentations and present these issues to their other Gannons, but also to look for speaking leadership opportunities throughout the university. We very much encourage all of our Gannons to get involved as leaders in whatever they're interested in. It could be a Hindu dance troupe. It could be starting their own um, nonprofit and providing services to the homeless. Whatever they're interested in, we encourage them to go out and seek leadership opportunities, and we really provide them even at Loyola University. So it's helping them identify their values and clarify their values and kind of separate them from maybe what they learned at home with what they're learning at a university level institution like Loyola, and thinking about big picture, what is really important to them, and then learning what their skills are. I'm not, as I said before, I'm not a screamer. It was interesting when I was at Veta Price, we had a women's rainmaker program, and I was on the panel, and there were some women who were very much go-getters. I'm going to go out, I'm going to bring them in, knock them over the head and drag them into the law firm. There are other leaders who are quiet. I could think back to what law firms often are, which it's very unsophisticated phrase, but uh, successful law firms are comprised of finders, grinders, and minders. Those who bring in clients, those who do the work, and those who develop and maintain relationships with clients. Now, the best person at a law firm is obviously someone who does all three, which is, I think, my skill was really doing all three. I didn't bring it in and turn it over. I brought it in, did the work, which makes you much better able to develop relationships with your clients. But I think, that is my approach. I'm not a screamer. I'm not forceful. I'm not going to sit in the background and wait for work to come to me. But I love interacting with people and trying to help people, trying to solve problems. And that's really been my style of leadership my entire life, frankly. And I try to really see if our Gannons are, if those are their skill sets, and if not, to talk to them about what their skill sets may be. They may be someone who's a little more gung-ho about knocking somebody over the head and dragging them in, but really that's not the approach of most women I know, and it's not the approach of most of our Gannon scholars because they're when we first of all we select our Gannon scholars. So we already are looking at women who've demonstrated leadership in their own lives, who are committed to service, who are committed to building community, and who are curious about the world. So we're working already with students who have so many of these skills. But again, as I said, it's to help them identify their values, identify their skills, and identify how they can apply their skills to become better leaders.
So you've been there now for about what, 10 years?
Not that long, 7 years. It feels like it's three, but it's been seven. It's astonishing.
What has been the most rewarding or surprising thing about leading the Gannon Center and your time there so far?
I think probably one of the most surprising things, wonderful things, they're all wonderful things, is that is our Gannon's commitment to diversity. Uh, I was a little worried when I arrived at Loyola that all the young women would look like me as a young woman. And we have a very interesting process um, by which we select our Gannon scholars. It's actually the students who conduct the final interviews. So we go through first of all, we receive over 1,000 applications every year for our 10 spots. We review almost 100% of those applications, our program manager and I, which takes 6 intense weeks where that's all you do. And then we use a rubric. The students make the next cut. We invite students, prospective Gannons in, the Gannon scholars themselves in groups interview them. So I was a little worried that, again, sort of like those um, programs and corporations when they want to recruit other employees, which have now been pretty much abandoned because of for many reasons. But we worry about people wanting to bring in people who look like them and think like them. And our Gannons are absolutely not interested in that. They want a wide diversity of types of people. Um, in every way, in every way. So I was very surprised, pleasantly surprised by their commitment to all kinds of diversity, and surprised by their innate leadership skills. This isn't something that I've had to, take some lump of clay and mold these students into leaders. They have natural leadership skills, which they might not even have identified early on. But when you see the other thing is their passion and enthusiasm for service. They're not all trying to climb the corporate ladder. They're really interested in a more holistic approach to life and leadership. And those things have been very some more surprising than others, but all so positive. And just being, as you know, being in a university setting is so um, inspires such hope, especially in these darker days. But seeing young people who have so much hope and are not as how should I say it? They haven't become cynical. And being surrounded by that is a very uplifting thing. I love to go to work every day.
So they go through the program, they graduate. How do you keep them in touch and help them pay things forward?
Well, we involve them uh, in programming with our current Gannon scholars. We invite them to events. They love to come. We set up mentorships, especially with Gannon alums in certain fields with our current Gannon scholars. We have a newsletter that helps keep everyone kind of connected. But it's been a little bit more difficult since COVID, frankly, because as I'm sure you know, COVID has affected how people interact with one another. And it's been difficult to get people out attending events in person. And that's fortunately been improving. And I think we've seen more activity with our pre-COVID alums than with our COVID-related alums because they're just more used to reaching out and being physically with other people. But that's changing too, where people are changing as they are out in the world again, learning more interpersonal skills. We're getting them back, but it's basically at every point we can, getting them involved. And we've expanded our Mundelein College alumni or association to include Gannon scholars as well. And so we're really, and it's very interesting because, of course, the Mundelein alums love working with the Gannon alums and the current Gannon scholars. And our current Gannon scholars love working with our Mundelein alums because the Mundelein alums majored in mathematics, they majored in chemistry. This was not a namby-pamby bunch of women. They were committed to academics and professionalism from 1930 onwards. So our current Gannons love to listen to them and speak with them. So we do have a lot of interaction between all of our alums with our current Gannon scholars. But it's becoming, we're improving our social networks. Finally started a WhatsApp community and moved to Instagram as well as our Facebook, LinkedIn, and other ancient forms of social media to keep people in the loop.
And for people who are not part of the Gannon community but would like to support your work, what's the best way for them to connect with you and the Gannon Center?
I think a lot of times we like to involve other people by bringing them in as speakers uh, for our programs. And we co-sponsor a number of programs throughout the university. If I see the word woman in anything, I'm on the phone. How can we partner with you? And so I've developed some wonderful relationships throughout the university so that uh, our Gannons and our faculty fellows, our professors, uh, are engaged in interaction with the rest of the university, and also beyond that. Obviously, I have a strong relationship with many legal entities, and I work a lot with the law school and the business school. We partner with them in all kinds of events and programming to provide information and opportunities not only for Gannon scholars but for students throughout the university. So it's really getting out there, getting the word out, bringing them in to help raise our Gannons and to help them find internships while they're in college, jobs after college. Of course, we are really self-funded, um, which is unusual at a university. The only funding that we receive from Loyola University is my salary. Otherwise, we are completely self-funded by donors, the majority of whom have been Mundelein alumni. So almost all of our funds go directly towards scholarships. We don't have a lot of soft funds for other things, but we have very faithful alumni, and we have, especially now, we're seeing an uptick, frankly, in donations from people and organizations that want to support women in leadership. And we're always, always, always interested in receiving financial support, but we really want human support as well. We want people who are involved. And it's one of the reasons we formed our Gannon Graduate Leaders Program, because our undergraduate program, our Gannon Scholars Program, really begins the minute they walk into Loyola University. We don't have the ability to bring in students at different types of uh, of their their program for our general scholarship program, but we do offer a number of other research scholarship opportunities that provide funding for research, which is very unusual in any university, but especially in an undergraduate program. So students from any part of the university can apply to be one of our research scholars in our many programs. We give out undergraduate leadership awards. So we do try to be as involved as we can throughout the university and bring other people in. But we try to reach out at every point of the university in order to be involved. Again, I see the word woman, I'm on the phone.
Great. And for folks who are listening in, viewing, you can do a Google search for Gabrielle Buckley, and then you can contact her with ideas on how you can support her program. As we draw to the end of the program, I did want to just end with two questions for you. Has there been a particular woman leader, historical or contemporary, that's inspired your work, your vision? But also, would you leave a thought for our listeners, our viewers on something they should think about in terms of women, in terms of leadership, in terms of the Gannon Center?
I'd have to say probably my biggest shero is Eleanor Roosevelt. Uh, for many, many reasons, as you can imagine, her passion for international work, her passion for human rights, uh, and her ability to get things done despite the odds. I think she's a wonderful role model for so many people. In terms of contemporary women, um, oh, there's so many. I would have that's a tougher question. I look often to women in politics because that's really my passion and background. In business, it's really kind of a mixed bag for me because there are many women leaders in the C-suite who culturally aren't as similar to me as others. I think um, probably I would have to say this will sound very odd, but uh, uh, role models is actually a nun, and that is probably Sister Anita Gannon, who's now gone, but she was lived a very practical life as a woman religious. She served on corporate boards. Ronald Reagan tapped her to um, assist his administration with bringing more women into the government, and she made a difference for women on oh so many levels. And one of the things that her greatest regret when she was 103 years old was that we had not passed the ERA in the United States, um, and not even in Illinois in the most recent version. And about a week before her death, Illinois passed the Equal Rights Amendment. And so we're not sure if she knew that it happened, but it happened in her lifetime. But I think someone who was very values driven, did not, most of the nuns I've worked with do not wear their religion on their habit or their sleeves. They just live their values. And I think that she was a very good example for me. And I'm not an overtly religious person. I believe in the values. I don't necessarily believe in other aspects of organized religion. In fact, Cranes did a piece on me a number of years ago, and I described myself as a Buddhist Catholic.
And
But
what does that mean?
well, it means I really believe a lot of the tenets of Buddhism, but I'm culturally Catholic. Um,
Zen
but
Buddhist?
Zen Buddhist. Actually, when I studied in Japan, I spent every Saturday night in a Buddhist temple in Kyoto, sitting zazen and meditating. Um, so probably an unusual thing for a young co-ed to be doing in any American related situation. But I think that women religious model very wonderful lives, and it's not really from a religion perspective.
Thank you. Final thought to
So, what
you,
words would I
Gabriel.
leave
What would you
with
leave
young
with
women,
now? Yes.
or women of any time? I think one is to
Or men for that matter.
or men, for that matter, is to really be authentic and identify your values and be authentic to them. I think it's very easy to be swayed at any time in our lives by what glitters. But I think to understand our values and trust your gut. Believe in yourself, and don't always think that someone, because they're older or they're a different gender or for any other reason, knows better than you do. But to be informed, understand your values, and believe in yourself.
Beautiful way to end. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of
Audrey, it was
Profiles in
lovely talking
Leadership.
to you.
And thank you for all that you do.
Well, thank you. Thank you for all that you do. I'm very much looking forward to working my way through your podcasts on this topic, because it's so important that we always keep learning.
Oh, thank you. You have a long flight to Japan. That may be one opportunity.
It will be. It will be.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.